Go.
Yeah, just saying liquidity from a agency side can really, fund, D2C product expansion, which is cool.
Yeah, and this is what I see a lot of agencies do. They'll use the liquidity from their agency to help fund an ecom brand or be able to work into the other side of ecom, because otherwise it's pretty expensive to start up an ecom brand and to completely bootstrap it and like fund the POs and the advertising yourself, especially if it's a new venture and you don't really have proof of concept yet.
And one of the benefits of running an agency that services these big e-commerce brands is you get to see underneath the hood. You get an idea of what their OpEx is, what their team structure is. And one thing I've really benefited from is seeing both brands that are doing it right from a scaling perspective and marketing perspective, but also brands that are also missing in a lot of areas too. And, some brands are doing it right in the sense that they're growing, there's a lot of revenue coming in, but they're missing in other areas, like the way they're, managing the cash flow, leading the company, organizing the team, and vice versa too. Some companies do their operations really well and then don't do their marketing. It's kind of a mixed bag, but getting to see that actually, I feel like it's given me a lot of insight to hopefully do it differently and build a strategy and a team that is optimal for what we're trying to do.
Yeah. I think there's a benefit of running in-house brands. So you have the agency side and then you have the in-house brands, because not only is it a proof of concept for your clients that you can actually do what you say you can do, but it's also you can apply a lot of your skills in real time to a brand.
Totally. I think for me, exploring the product side of things is really for me to learn some of the pain points that our clients have, to learn what are they thinking about apart from just ads. Because when we come into the picture with the client, our goal is to really make the advertising, the paid media, a space that they don't have to think about. At the end of the day, they can look at their monthly ad spend against their total revenue and know that it's profitable and they've gotten the results that they need to run an effective business on the other side.
I
And
know
that's where
that's
you
not
really
like,
hit the sweet spot.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, I was just saying that's where you really hit the sweet spot where there's that much trust with the client that they know you're taking all means necessary to get the highest return for their investment. And it's a partnership because you want to work with clients that are also doing that on their end with their product, with their operations, with their team, with their cash flow, and with the rest of their marketing as well. And knowing that they're putting that level of investment to make their CRO optimal so that when you're driving traffic, it has a real effect.
Honestly, I think that's the big difference of working with small brands versus bigger ones. I find sometimes when you work with small brands, they want to look to you as the lifeline. But the larger brands that have content creators on deck, they're ordering down pat, they have multiple skids coming in every month. I think those brands that take it super seriously are so much easier to work with in a sense, because they're looking to you to manage one aspect of the business, not to be their saving grace and help them 3x revenue overnight.
Exactly. There's nothing worse than feeling like all of the pressure of the success of the business falls on you as the advertiser and media buyer. Because it really doesn't, and it would be great to take credit for the brands that have had rapid success, scaled to 9 figures, but really it wasn't us. We just got to take part in a greater team that made that happen.
Yeah, you got to take,
Now,
and I think that's also where the experienced brand owner can see through the bullshit for advertising agencies. Sometimes they're like, oh, we can help you go to 9 figures. Or even sometimes when you see those case studies of like, we took this brand to 9 figures, it's like, well, you didn't do the ordering or the manufacturing. You didn't set up their MOQs. Like, there's so many things that you didn't do to help scale that brand, but you were a integral part on the paid media side, maybe the organic side, probably the email marketing side. And it's a huge piece.
it is. It's a really big piece, but it doesn't need to be overcredited. It's like one thing we really look for in clients are good operators. Are they curious? And they don't have to be a massive brand, but if they're a good operator in the sense of they're asking the right questions and they're also realizing, what's their lane and what's not and where their expertise ends. And, we've had some smaller brands that we've worked with that it's been a 1-2 man shop and, we have been able to have incredible success with them being a growth partner, a consultant, media agency. But the relationships that are successful, it really comes down to that operator and that founder, CEO, and how they conduct their business and their mindset. And they might not have a ton of experience in D2C, but are they asking the right questions and are they willing to learn? And, in that case, it can be like rocket fuel, because our expertise with their drive and understanding of product and even understanding of their customer can be really effective.
I think understanding a product and passion for product is the most underrated thing there. Like, I've worked with a few brands that are dropshipped products, they're subpar products, or they've like found the manufacturer of another product and try to do a spin-off of it. And it's not nearly as effective as somebody that has come up with the product on their own or really built their own brand identity. And someone that's obsessed with that brand and obsessed with the product, I find it so much easier to scale because you almost build your own laneway. You're not necessarily competing with other people because you have built your own brand. Like Lululemon competes with a million companies, but if the consumer wants Lulu, they're going to Lulu. That's probably a big example, but yeah.
100%. And I think you touched on something regarding brand that a lot of performance marketers tend to neglect, and brand power. We tend to get stuck in this mindset of performance creative and direct response video and get the conversion now. And it's a very nearsighted view. Performance marketers generally, what kind of attribution model, but they generally, optimize towards that immediate sale and neglect the fact that, like, if you're investing in brand for a good 6 months to a year and your ads are good and you're able to maintain profitability, there's a reciprocal effect of growing that brand presence, growing your customer base, growing customer loyalty, having people really brought into that I really think is undervalued in the e-commerce space, because we want these quick returns. We want it now. We want the conversion now. And we're willing to like put out creative that's, going to do anything to get that sale now. Just candidly, one of the discussions we're having with Meta on some of our biggest accounts right now are, of course, they're haven't, creative diversification is one of their biggest topics right now. It has been for the last year. But in addition to that, for some of the larger advertisers that have been primarily DR focused, and DR is what got them to where they are, the conversation now is like brand awareness, reach. How do we instill a message into an audience base that is going to be memorable? And how do we approach social media marketing in a different way? Because, this kind of touches on another topic of like TikTok and even Instagram Reels now. It's really an entertainment platform. It's social-tainment. You're not going to Reels to connect with your friends or see what they're doing. You're going there to be entertained. And direct response ads don't have the same effect on Reels as they do in stories or on feed or in social advertising. As well, they don't get measured the same. And so a lot of brands will put these performance-oriented videos into Reels and they'll do okay, but I think they're really missing the point. Like, if they approach their advertising and their content creation as you would if you were buying ads for the Super Bowl, and you're really putting a lot of thought into the message that you put out and the creativity that's behind that advertisement, I think ultimately they're going to have a much larger effect long term. It's going to be harder to measure at first, but they're going to be instilling their ethos into that consumer psyche that is going to be swept up through the DR marketing that they're running maybe underneath it. I think we see that with a lot of the big, I think we see it with a lot of the big Fortune brands that are advertising on TikTok. And you have to wonder, like, what those conversations are like, at the boardroom or whatever, like, to invest those budgets into TikTok. Because, I know a lot of brands that, because they don't see the same results from a last click direct response perspective on TikTok, their budget is maybe less than 5% allocated to TikTok because they're measuring it in the wrong way. However, we know there's brands out there that are spending more on TikTok than they are on Facebook, and they're clearly profitable.
About the Gen Z audience, they're basically a non-click audience. They're going to see something and then look it up on ChatGPT or screenshot it, but they're not necessarily going to click on the ad. If you're a last click advertiser, you're just chasing your tail, basically. If you're ignoring reach and you're only focused on attribution, it's a short-term gain.
Exactly. And the Facebook algorithm, this is even our reps at the highest level have said this, like, the in-market audience on Facebook is only about 20% of their user base. So if you think of a conversion optimized campaign going after this in-market audience, because that's what they're supposed to do, and every DR advertiser going after that audience on Facebook, that's a really small pool of people. And of course you run into this issue of customer saturation and having trouble really gaining incrementality with your ads and getting out of that high frequency, I call it the high frequency, like content sludge, where it's, somebody has signaled to Facebook they're in market and they just get the same ad over and over and over again. And brands are paying, for way too many touch points for this customer. All that to say is like, yeah, of course, DR is going to be limited in how far you can go and its efficiency. So that's a conversation we're having a lot more with brands is how do we position our social ads to be more brand centric, more, I don't know, I don't want to say more emotional, but to really connect with a user in a different way rather than just trying to sell them a product.
So to just align with the entertainment part, like I guess now you have to put all of your ads through a mental filter of, is this entertaining? And if it's not, then it's probably not going to land as well for the consumer.
Exactly. I think of it like this. If someone sees this ad, are they going to go send it to their friend? Because that is the main metric that Meta uses to qualify Instagram posts. It's not about how many followers you have. It's like, is your content getting shared? And if it's shareable, then of course it's going to get a higher premium on the CPM.
It makes sense if you think about it objectively. Like what's Meta's goal? It's to have time on platform, right? They want as many users on platform as they can, and they want them spending as much time on the platform as possible. So shareable content, something that you think someone else is going to enjoy, that's the objective.
Exactly. And that, frankly, requires a lot more creativity and a lot more thought. It's something that DR advertising community is not, I feel like has barely scratched the surface of, where more traditional brand agencies, they know how to connect with the consumer in a way that's going to delight them and engage them and ultimately bring them into the community of that brand.
Such an interesting take. I guess you don't realize it until you hear it said out loud. It's easy to get stuck in the DR world when that's what we talk about and think about all day long. But yeah, the branding side is so important. It can't be understated.
Totally. And I guess the tension comes with the smaller brands that do have to worry about cash flow management. And so it's really hard for those brands to break out of that DR perspective because you do need a direct return on those ads before the end of the month so that your cash conversion cycle can fund your ads for the next month.
I guess that's the importance of looking at MER and not just ROAS or ROI on your individual ads. Like you need to look at it as a collective, and you probably need to just stretch out the time horizon.
Exactly. Stretch out the time horizon, adjust the metrics that you're looking at as a brand owner, and then really plan for the long term. We have this idea because a campaign is so easy to create in Meta, like, oh, I put a campaign up for this, or I put a campaign up for that product, or we launched a campaign. If you think of the word campaign, it derives from a military term. There was sometimes years of planning that went into a military campaign of how they would amass their resources, get the right troops and the right tools and weapons, and really think through this campaign. Before they hit go and the dominoes started to fall, everything was planned out. And it was very rare where you'd get a third of the way done with the campaign and you would pull back unless there's severe defeats or something. Like just the idea of a campaign in general, it's a war term. As brands are preparing their marketing, we're working with a brand that has a go-to-market strategy right now. It's going to be a great pet food product. We're really thinking ahead of like, okay, we need to give them a budget forecast that's at least 1 to 3 years of run rate to build this product. And they need to know, and their investors need to know that this isn't a overnight thing. Like it's great if we can get an overnight success, but we need to be planning on the customer nurture sequence for up to a year sometimes. And what we're going to be spending in January, February, March, and how that's going to be connected to the following November, December, and really thinking about it from a broader perspective. Because campaigns are, I go back to this a lot. It's a military term. So even if we're going to launch a campaign on Facebook, it's not something we're just throwing a dart in the air. There's a lot of thought and there's a lot of budget calculations. And ultimately, you let it run until you know without a doubt either that campaign's going to work or it's not. And making that decision is a whole nother process. But yeah, sometimes I feel like the word campaign gets thrown around too loosely because it's so easy these days to just throw an ad up for a product and hope it sells.
Yeah, and I think that's the user's perception as well, because I think that's what Meta has made it feel like, because it's just easier to get people on the platform. It's easier to get people using it. But that's a tough mental shift for brands to go through, to think, okay, I'm not even looking at my return on the monthly basis. I'm looking at how my January spend affects my December revenue. But that commitment to branding It's a mental shift. It takes a lot of time to even just convince the brand owner that building the brand is going to have a direct impact on your conversion campaigns, but it's not going to happen inside of a 30-day window.
Exactly. And there's so many other elements that go into it as well. Owned channels versus earned media, like email, SMS, SEO, AI, like all of these factors work together and ultimately a system that's going to create a ATM machine of sorts at some point.
Yeah.
But to get to that place, you really have to focus on brand and building an ethos and an idea around something.
I guess the other tough shift is it's a lot more effort. It's like running direct response ads is a lot easier than like taking the time and energy and effort and mental fortitude to be able to think through and create a really proper brand that people will resonate with.
Totally. And it requires a lot more creativity and a lot more like context or a deeper connection with what the culture is, like the heartbeat of the culture. To really do it well, you really need to be in touch with that heartbeat or even the heartbeat of your audience and really know them and be able to speak to them, which that's a relational thing. That's the other side of the brain. A lot of us live in this data world. It's this left brain, very mathematical, analytical. We're performance marketers, data driven. And, that's an IQ thing. Brand is an EQ thing, in my opinion.
Do you think that it's more important now to have a face to the brand, to be founder-led marketing?
We saw a pretty big trend of that in the last couple of years of like brands being really successful because they had a strong founder story and there was this buy-in to what the founder was doing. I still think that's a thing. I still think it creates this sense of authenticity, which is lacking in social media these days. And when you find that authenticity, it's there. Something interesting is happening right now. Santa Cruz, I think it's Santa Cruz. What is it? It's basically I think it's a CBD company from Santa Cruz. Basically, it's this CBD. They're pretty big. It's Santa Cruz Herbals or something like that. Long story short, some of us have been following along with Liver King. He's having this like, we don't know if it's legit or not, but it's like this kind of this psychosis thing. He's going on social media like once a day or a few times a day, and he's just kind of talking nonsense. He was like trying to get Joe Rogan on his podcast. He flies out there, he's trying to fight Joe Rogan. They end up arresting him. Like there's this whole thing going on with Liver King. And you wonder like, all right, is this a publicity stunt or is he really losing his mind? It seems like this guy's like losing it. And it's really sad to watch. But then at the same time, Santa Cruz Medicinals, the founder, flies out and ends up spending a few days with Liver King. And his whole message between this is like, this guy just needs a hug. Like he just needs this. He works out with him and he's spending time with him. And I just thought it was really interesting because it seems genuine. It really seems authentic. Like the guy that runs this company is really concerned for Liver King and going out and just wanting to see with his own eyes what's going on. And he writes this really long, like heart-filled post. And it got me like asking, all right, who's this brand? Santa Cruz Medicinal or whatever, or Santa Cruz, I can't remember. But it's this idea of like, oh, wow, he sort of inserted himself in the narrative there of what's going on with this guy that's got, 3 million followers. And it's definitely creating a buzz. Like he inserted himself into the narrative, but he approached it from a means of compassion. Everyone that's following along with this is suddenly looking up this guy's company too. There's this cross-marketing effect. I just thought that's whether it's creative marketing or just being authentic and genuinely compassionate and wanting to see how they could help Liver King, who knows? But things like that I find really engaging because now I'm kind of bought into the story even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're bought in and you're looking into them. It's interesting. This probably sounds contradictory, but it's kind of like strategic authenticity. Been authentic and helped somebody that has a lot of publicity. So it's, kind
exactly.
of two birds.
Yeah. A similar story, if you followed Sailing with Phoenix and his journey from Portland, this guy quit his corporate job, bought a sailboat, learned to sail, and then created videos while he's doing it, sailed all the way from Oregon to Hawaii. And about halfway down the trip, everybody started tuning into this guy's story and like went viral overnight, instantly to like 2 million followers to where like, he's got his little Starlink on his sailboat and it's just him and his cat. And it's like, I quit my job in corporate America. I hated my life. I saved up, cashed out my 401k, bought a sailboat. And he's like our age, he gets there and it's so funny because he starts getting these brand deals and this guy, you watch his videos and you're like, this guy's authentic. Like this reminds me of my friend Matt kind of deal. You're just like,
Sure.
oh yeah, like I could hang with him. It's not produced. Well, I thought it was really interesting. He runs out of Pringles and he's like, oh no, I've ate all my Pringles this whole trip. And long story short, there's another, he's getting close to Hawaii. And the next video you see is of a plane flies by and drops him a care package out of the sky. And you see this scene of him picking out this care package. And of course, there's these nice notes and there's these Pringles and then there's these drawings from these kids. And it turns out that Elf Cosmetics, so a cosmetics brand, which Elf Cosmetics basically sponsored this care package drop and gave him all these, goodies in a care package in the middle of the ocean, and also gave him their new, skincare sunscreen line, right? And here you have
Brilliant.
Elf Cosmetics probably clearly trying to market to this guy's audience, men, in their 30s that wouldn't normally follow Elf Cosmetics and wouldn't know that Elf Cosmetics has a, skincare line. Or like, I had no idea honestly who Elf Cosmetics was until I told my wife about it. And she's like, oh, no way. Yeah, they're huge. It's just really interesting because they maximized that moment. And I have no data on how their sales did, but I can only imagine that by inserting themselves into that story in a really authentic way, that they saw a pretty genuine lift in that demo that they're trying to gain audience penetration in.
And so they should. I mean, that's the kind of creativity that should be rewarded.
Exactly.
That's so
And
smart. Don't you wish you thought of that? When I hear that, I'm like, oh, brilliant. I wish that I was there.
we were at the Meta Summit and, the Sydney Sweeney Dr. Squatch, Sydney Sweeney bathwater soap. Turns out it's actually her bathwater, which is crazy. But we had dinner with the folks that were behind that campaign, and they kind of shared insights into how the whole thing went down. And originally it was just supposed to be a shoot with Sydney Sweeney in a bathtub advertising this soap, until someone on their team had the idea of like, hey, let's actually make a soap out of her bathwater. Kind of gross. And, the main question was like, is it really her bathwater? Turns out like one little droplet of her bathwater was put into the soap. And so technically it is. But the amount of conversation that campaign has created, I think it was tactfully done because they just got acquired, obviously, by, I think it was Unilever for, absorbent amount of money. But like, that kind of marketing is disruptive. It's speaking to their audience. That was actually from a performance marketing team, which is incredible because most of the time, performance marketers are not thinking in this direction. And I think if we're going to continue to survive and iterate as performance marketers, our mind has to be consumed with brand marketing. And we really need to be leading the charge on it, because when you pair that with performance marketing and social media marketing and paid ads, that's where you get the recipe for explosive growth.
The tactics of performance marketing, but I guess the creative of a true creative branding team.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the sauce.
Yeah.
Wow.
100%.
I'm just trying to think through all these other viral ideas. There will be something. We need to find a way to get CE Digital into one of these, do a drop of like a Meta ad budget. Here's a Meta gift card when you're in the middle of the ocean.
Here's run your ads on us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's really
I
interesting.
think it's just paying attention and being ready,
Yeah. Being ready to move. I mean, those campaigns, that's like a light bulb moment of an idea, and the execution behind it. I mean, everybody came together to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. You have maybe a couple days to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part I see with these companies too, as they grow. It's like, how do you continue to stay nimble and in some ways act like a startup and have the creativity of a startup, yet still have the systems and processes of a larger company?
Well, I think that does it for today.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll catch up next week.
See ya.